Redditors who have been in coma for a long time. Greater than 1 year. What was it like to wake up again? And how did you adjust to literally a long fast forward? I had no idea where I was. I had no idea what happened. Months later I was still learning about who did or didn't visit, pray, call, ask. Finances were a total mess. Trust me, companies do not care. Massive debt and financial penalties. And took over 18 months to get a job after painful physical rehabilitation and explaining over and over that I was in a coma. Not just not working. Then COVID. My uncle and dad were in a terrible wreck when they were both 19. My dad was out about 6 to 7 hours. Remembers nothing. My uncle was in a coma for 6 weeks. He said he could hear every conversation. Knew when people visited him, but he couldn't communicate or move a muscle. He can still recall conversations people had while visiting him. He said his greatest fear was they would think he was dead and bury him. He was terrified because he couldn't react or communicate and didn't know what they would do with him. Then he woke up. He had some lifelong disabilities but went on to become the VP at his company in Texas. Edit. Wow, I had no idea you awesome people would give my uncle's story so much response. Thanks for the awards. I was out for just over a month. It was surreal. Like a dream I couldn't quite wake up from. When I woke up, my arms and legs didn't work and my vision and thoughts were really fuzzy. I thought I was out for a few days and was unpleasantly surprised to know it has been over a month. Hollywood's depiction of waking from a coma is shockingly wrong. I was really stunned when my friend was in one for about a month and had to relearn virtually every basic function. I was out for 40 days after a motorcycle accident. But I don't remember much for about 6 weeks after that as well. I was sedated with ketamine and a mix of opiates and started to wean off of them while still on a ventilator and ECMO. I was extremely confused and seeing double, so I was terrified. Communicating was very hard because of the confusion and that I couldn't talk or write. The thing I remember most vividly is the insane hallucinations I had as a result of the ketamine. I was hallucinating something that was making me freak out and try to rip the tubes out of me, including my ventilator, chest tubes, and arterial lines, so they had no choice but to tie my limbs down and put boxing gloves on my hands. I had no idea I was doing any of that. But I had moments where I was significantly more aware of what was going on, which were so frustrating because I was completely tied down and again couldn't communicate. The doctors and nurses kept trying to explain to me what I was doing and that I needed to stop. But I did not understand. I felt like I was being tortured and I couldn't understand why. At the time of my accident, I was in an online relationship that had become very rocky. I had booked a flight to meet the girl and my accident happened the day before my flight. This was only somewhat of a coincidence, as I was riding my motorcycle extremely recklessly due to my emotions and frustration in the relationship, and with my life for other reasons. My family knew about my relationship and was able to tell her. But it wasn't until about 3 months after the day of the accident that I talked to her for the first time by sending her a video. One of my respiratory therapists put a device on my tracheostomy so I was able to talk. This was an extremely emotional moment and my mom was the first person to hear my voice. I used the device to talk on the phone with the girl. But it was difficult because the ventilator was loud and the device did not sound like my normal voice. My relationship with her was not the same and not recoverable. In hindsight, this was for the better. But in the moment, despite all the terrible things I was experiencing, the feeling of having lost the connection with this girl who was my first love was awful. By this time I was becoming completely aware of what I did and what happened. and extremely conscious of what I had put my mom through, as she had been by my side every day in the hospital, not knowing if I would survive, or if I had sustained significant brain damage. After 5 months in the hospital, I was transferred to a rehabilitation facility. And 2 weeks later, December 2019, discharged home with a wheelchair and walker. I was gaining the ability to walk short distances on my own and even decided to start college again. Then COVID hit, and I also experienced some unfortunate medical complications that kept me in and out of the hospital for most of 2020. This is all very recent. But every aspect of my life has changed post-accident. My finances are in ruin. My physical health and pain is terrible, but given the fact that I have all my limbs and can still walk, I feel like I can't complain. I value time completely differently because of my continuing medical complications. I don't think I will live very long. It's a lot harder for me to get angry or upset about anything because it all feels insignificant compared to being tied down, unable to communicate, and in pain. I could write a book filled with details of the past and how I'm doing now. So I'll cut it off here. Edit. Should clarify that I can speak perfectly fine now with my original voice. My tracheostomy hole closed well. While it was closing, I could force air out of the tiny hole and it sounded like a kazoo. I get tired of hearing myself talk about this, as it's become my entire identity and I don't like that feeling. Someday I'll make a blog detailing some of my unique medical experiences so the next me won't feel so alone when they Google their issues. Thanks everyone for the kind words. Does it count if you can't remember a single thing for 6 to 8 weeks? I was technically out, but my wife says she had a conversation with me every day. I don't remember anything but was medically sedated for almost 2 months after getting hit by a car cycling. Anyway, I couldn't walk or use any extremities upon coming to. Extreme muscle atrophy required almost 2 years of PT to regain full independence. Not fun at all. What is an amazing movie that has a god-awful sequel? This thread might as well be movies I didn't know had sequels. Mean Girls. American Psycho 2. Didn't even start as a sequel, but they decided to make it one for a quick buck. I loved The Mummy Return, but the third one was just horrible. Starship Troopers. Jarhead. Oh God, we just watched Surf's Up 2 that was paid for by the WWE. When did you realize that you were officially not young anymore? When a song I loved as a teenager appeared as an oldie on the radio. When I dislocated my jaw lying in bed yawning. Didn't even think it was even possible. Reasonably recent references are met with dead silence and confusion by young adults, teens. Kids call you, sir, or, that man over there. Body aching the morning after moderate physical activity. Food starts to give you problems while you used to eat tons of it with no repercussions. When I was trying to hang out and play with my kid at school drop-off. And she was like, "Mom." Not in front of my friends. I realized in that very moment that I was not young, fun, cool mom, but indeed old, regular, embarrassing mom. Also, every single time someone calls me, ma'am. I just bought a new mop and was really excited to go home and use it. I mopped the whole apartment in absolute bliss. I finally decided that I will not fall for the Swiffer commercials again. When I went to a nightclub last weekend and everyone looks like children. What seemingly stupid business ideas have turned out extremely successful? I bred tarantulas professionally for over 6 years. I made £100,000 plus a year at my peak. But yeah, making spiders' bone seems like a fucking terrible life goal, LMAO. Airbnb. When Paul Graham first funded them, he was like, "People actually host strangers in their homes?" When assured that this was a thing people actually did, his response was, "What's wrong with them?" Quote. Brian Chesky, Airbnb's founder, also calls it the worst idea that ever worked. Let's spend millions of dollars to make a video game that is free to play and then sell customized animations and models that don't affect gameplay but just looks cool. Watch this video. Dumb luck personified. Timothy Dexter. https youtube.com/watch v=chsuvdu_sbk. Need I say more? From Wikipedia. Because he was largely uneducated, his business sense was considered peculiar. He was advised to send bed warmers, used to heat beds in the cold New England winters, for resale in the West Indies, a tropical area. This advice was a deliberate ploy by rivals to bankrupt him. His ship's captain sold them as ladles to the local molasses industry and made a handsome profit. Next, Dexter sent wool mittens to the same place, where Asian merchants bought them for export to Siberia. Their story keeps going and gets progressively more strange. There's an urban legend that the founder of FedEx put forward his idea for his company in a marketing paper and it got a failing grade, falsely advertising brine shrimp as intelligent subaquatic humanoids that make great pets. All you have to do is call them sea monkeys and you can make millions of dollars disappointing children around the world.
Subscribe, my brothers.